We are live and back with another episode of the No More Interruptions show. And today I have Amanda from Toronto. Yay, Amanda. Tell our community about you.
That was a very energetic introduction. We just found out that we're in the same city, which is pretty cool. Because,
Yeah.
as you know, guesting on these podcasts and having guests on come from all over the place. So it's kind of neat that we could almost like wave to each other. Not quite. But,
Yeah.
so I was in real estate development for 30 years. Series of events led me to have to make a decision whether I was staying in that business or trying something else. And I had a business idea. I started working with a coach. I had no idea that working with a coach was going to bring some personal revelations to me. And I guess put together a lot of things that had happened in my life. The puzzle all came together. And somehow I ended up becoming a personal growth coach. And I'm basically helping other women and a few men avoid the difficult struggles I had with toxic and dysfunctional relationships. I didn't know at the time that there was something necessarily wrong with a lot of the relationships.
Right.
Turns out there is. So, one of my goals is to be able to share that knowledge now and help people avoid a lot of the struggles I had and not lose time in their lives.
That's so important. Now, for people who don't know and want a better understanding, what is the toxic and dysfunctionals? Like, what are we looking for, basically?
It can be belittling, it can be ignoring. I know I have a post that I've done recently that's garnered a lot of conversation about the silent treatment is toxic behavior. And when I write it, some people are like, well, I've had to go silent on someone and I'm not toxic. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about when somebody treats you that way.
Right.
When you're talking and trying to explain and it's
Brushing
like
you
talking to
off.
a brick wall and you're so desperate to want resolution. People that, I'm going to say lie, egomaniacs. The word narcissist I use, and we have to get into what exactly is a narcissist, but a narcissist is a person that's displaying a lot of toxic behavior.
Right.
It's dysfunctional behavior. It's just not equal treatment. It's not treating somebody with respect. And, on the receiving end, you feel unseen, unheard, unsupported. And I think that's also, sometimes even more telling is like, how are we feeling and how are my clients feeling? Because there's so many different behaviors and characteristics. I think at the end of the day, it's not feeling supported, not feeling loved, feeling judged. Like I said, unseen, unheard, and your emotional needs aren't met. And, in my humble opinion, those are kind of birthrights. Like, I think, I believe people deserve a chance to be happy and be heard and be loved and be supported. We all need more of that. And, everybody's got their own battles. And, sometimes we can't help those people or those people don't want to be helped. So, we've got to decide how we're going to take care of ourselves.
And so what would you say would be some of those things that you and strategies and tools that you start to take care of yourself?
Setting boundaries with what sort of behavior you're willing to tolerate. I know in some situations, verbally setting a boundary you have to look at each case separately because, there are going to be situations where you're in a position where you're not safe or you don't feel safe setting a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's some of them are silent. A lot of it is just changing your energetics and learning to, and like I said, I don't avoid answering the question, but it really is a case by case basis.
Right.
In my scenario, I estranged myself from my parents and one sibling 10
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And that was my boundary. And that was what I needed to do to feel safe and
Mm-hmm.
start healing stuff I didn't even know needed healing. Um,
Right.
you know, putting, and again, we can go back to family, when it comes to events and whatnot, deciding, if you're going to family events, if you're going, how long you're staying.
Yeah.
If you're going to I remember going to meet my parents for, lunches in a midway point, and I made sure that, there were 4 topics that were not to be discussed.
Right.
Because there was a conflict there. So, and it makes it extremely uncomfortable and not unnatural. But in my instance, I didn't have anybody guiding me. I kind of went through it blindly and got to the point where no one was listening and I had to walk away. But what I
Right.
didn't know is that you can't change other people.
Yep. And that's a
And
hard lesson.
that
Hard
is what, if I have to go back and look at all the struggles I've had with bosses, with family, and sometimes with friends, it was
lesson.
that I was trying to, and when I say change, I don't mean change as like the intrinsic person necessarily, but there was some pretty bad behavior and bad treatment of me. And that's the stuff I was trying to get to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right.
didn't realize that it was up to me to make some of my own adjustments, and then see what the trickle effect is or was of
Right.
that. Um,
Mm.
and that's, something else I work with my clients on. I mean, it sounds really simple just to say you can't change other people, but I'm 56 and I only learned that recently. And it sounds so simple.
But it's not. It's
No.
not. Because it becomes a mix of you want it's like helping them, right? And you get stuck in the need to help them. They can do it. I know I believe in them. I know they can do it. And then the dealing with the grief, the loss of that, whatever that relationship is. There's a lot packed into, you know, why people want to change people
Mm-hmm. And,
or people think
I
people.
just, like I said, I looked at, work and family situations, and it was like, you know, banging your head against a brick wall. And the more I tried to challenge and change and explain, like I look like the thou dost protest too much.
Yep.
That's kind of what it was like. And,
Mhm.
then anyway, without getting into all my personal stuff, I know I did not have anyone to guide me through those times. I did have, a traditional armchair therapist. I'm
Right.
not knocking them, and I'm not a medical professional. I do have, training, and I have hard lived experience. But
Mhm.
the armchair therapy really got me through the day to day, but it gave
Right.
me no tools about understanding people, myself, my unconscious, and
Mhm.
how I was, this 10% from the neck up is running the show, but it's being run by the 90% of, how we see the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and, all those sort of awarenesses and breaking down, you know, the pieces.
Mhm.
When my client comes to me, they may come with a presenting problem. The problem is they've got a dysfunctional relationship, but we're really going to start working on them.
Right. Yes, because it starts with you first.
It does. And as much as the other person may be I don't know, just a crazy person or whatever we want to, probably using politically incorrect terms.
Right.
but we still have some responsibility in terms of like adding fuel to the fire, keeping the relationship or the dysfunction gone. Like I said, I caveat because there's, physically abusive, there's verbally abusive,
Yeah.
there's some dangerous situations. And, I would never feign to start just giving off the cuff sort of advice, so to speak. But,
Right.
I'm not saying that my client who is in an abusive or dysfunctional relationship is to blame for it. However, we are responsible for ourselves. And, it's like I said, it's not blanket. In all cases, you can't just necessarily walk or set boundaries.
Hmm.
Um, and there's so much more to it. Like there's traumas that the clients have gone through themselves. And it's,
Yeah.
there's a whole onion to peel back.
Yes, there is. So, okay. As we were talking, a thought came to my head, and I know it's a big trend right now, and it's like your social circles, like removing yourself from your social circles. So, and those dysfunctional social circles, right? Those toxic social circles. So, what are some strategies? Because that's a conversation in our community all the time. Um, what are some strategies that you recommend for a woman who is in an unhealthy social circle?
The one thing I would probably avoid doing is confronting it,
Mm.
because I think, confronting it, like if you're wanting to change it or to call somebody out,
Hmm.
chances are they're going to be on the defensive and you're going to end up feeling hurt at the end of
Right.
the day. Um, I think it's just, when you say social, like if it's invitations and group things,
Hmm.
it is making excuses, but it's putting yourself first. And like I said, no one needs to explain why they're doing something.
Right.
So I just think gradually, well, it doesn't even have to be gradually. You just start taking a few steps back. And the other thing that happens when you're doing that, you may either see the real true colors where no one comes after you and says what's wrong, or
Hmm.
someone may step out of that group and go, "Hey, is everything okay?
Yeah.
We've seen you back away."
Hmm.
Um, and obviously removing yourself, as tempting as it is, we're all voyeurs, removing yourself from the temptations of following them and the social media and whatnot, and you start to get the fear of missing out when they're carrying on without you anymore. um,
Right.
I've been on the receiving end of that, not
Hmm.
necessarily because I'm going to say the one to blame, but it's that's something else that can be done.
Yeah. 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 So, with and being in those types of relationships and having those types of experiences, what would you say are some of the limiting beliefs that, well, one you experienced and some of your clients have experienced?
That I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
I know one of the ones I really struggled with, and still do occasionally, it still pops up there,
Yeah.
is people don't like me.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not smart. Did I say I'm not smart enough? I'm not smart enough is another one that comes up a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not worthy. Those would be probably four, you know, main ones. I mean, we can go down the I'm not lovable.
Right.
I'm too old. Um, yeah.
And you're not, because you look amazing.
No, I'm not too old. And thank you
No,
for saying that.
no, you're not. So what are you doing now? Because those are the limiting beliefs, and we know that they're not true. They're just things that like to come up and create barriers for us sometimes. But we have to combat those thinking and start to move towards positive thinking. So what are some positive things that you are doing or saying to yourself to help you move past when those limiting beliefs show up?
I was working with another coach about a year ago, and I think we were on a call one day, and I was feeling stuck. I think I had a bit of imposter syndrome. And I can't remember exactly the term she used, but I'm saying it's joy stacking.
Mm-hmm.
So when I start to go down that rabbit hole or start doubting myself, because although validation from other people is nice,
Yeah.
you're not always going to get it.
No.
So I do something called joy stacking, and I do this with my clients, and I've passed it along to a few friends lately. And I kind of look at, you can go in a year, 6 months, 3 months, but if you're on that personal growth journey, because these are
Mm-hmm.
the people I think we're talking to or who are listening to us today,
Right.
um, you know, what's in your life that wasn't 6 months ago? And I mean, for me, it was, I hadn't booked 36 podcasts to be a guest on. You know,
Woo!
I hadn't, my boyfriend moved in, and it's the first time in 56 years that I've lived with anybody. I know I'm a late bloomer. I have a lot of shit in the way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
hadn't just bought a new house together, didn't have a mailing list of subscribers.
Amazing.
Um, you know, didn't have my final certification in quantum change process level 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hadn't attracted some really awesome, like-minded new individuals into my life. None of that stuff was here 6 months ago. So I have to remind myself when I'm doubting that
Right.
I'm also attracting, with all this work I've done, attracting and continue to do, because it is an
Mm-hmm.
ongoing process, but I'm attracting all these things that I've never had before. And
Right.
it's amazing. It really
Yeah,
is.
it is. It's amazing and beautiful. And how are you feeling? Like, what are the feelings you're feeling?
At peace,
Mm-hmm.
uh, lucky. Um, I have the tools to better manage. We're still going to get triggered. It doesn't matter how much
Yeah.
we're trained. And sometimes having all this awareness now about why we're reacting to, or why we're responding or wanting to react a certain way can be
Mm-hmm.
exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can be driving and someone does something and I want to just react a certain way. And then I'm like, no, stop. There's more to the story. They've got a story. I would say, not that I've ever not been compassionate, but I
Right.
think in dealing with, if I had to go back to the workplace, like where there was a lot of dysfunction, there were a lot of egos. And when, the guy came in trying to be Mr. Macho, what did Amanda do? Just went head to head with him and tried to put him in his place.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's not worth it. And I know
Nope.
that. Second of all, I'd probably take a softer approach than I did back then. And
Yeah.
third of all, I'd look at the individual and go, okay, why are they behaving that way?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a reason,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then, you know, how are you going to then diffuse the situation? And I know you said you'd ask me at the end, but I did do a book, an ebook, and it basically goes through like a before and after of 4 different scenarios
Mm-hmm.
of, actually, they were all my real life examples. And then there was the after, using the tools like setting boundaries, saying no, using I statements. Um, and I never got a chance to practice those because I didn't have the tools when I was in the situation. But I
Right.
write how the outcome would have been. And
Right.
and some of it is just, disarming people, and not in a manipulative way whatsoever,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in a very conscious way.
Right. And it's just a softer, more approachable, not confrontational, and
Hmm.
creating the space for that person to learn from what you are bringing, right? So that they don't have to go to the next situation and deal with it the same way they dealt with you.
Correct. And I, like I said, I did very well in the job I was in. Had a senior level management position for years, had tons of autonomy and responsibility. But I can't say I was everybody's favorite.
Right.
And there were definitely certain behaviors that, triggered the heck out of me. And, would I like the chance for a do-over? No, I like my life right now. And it doesn't mean that any of their behavior was okay. I mean, I'm sitting in a boardroom and one of these men is acting like a pompous whatever, or one of these women walks in using their, sexual prowess to try take over the room. And those things, like me, it's like red flags. Like, I don't like anybody. Like, I'm what you see is what you get. So putting on these shows, and I didn't consciously go, I want to knock them down a spot, but I'm like, no, this is my boardroom. I'm running this meeting. Like, take it down a notch. But no one ever had my back. And everybody just let these people behave that way. And, I'd leave the meeting and I'm like, what? Like, why doesn't anybody ever say anything?
Right.
And I mean, I don't know how many times with leadership, I was like, this isn't right. And I mean, it's just the way it is. Like, no one wanted to deal with it. No one wanted to confront them. And if that's the way the world's working sometimes, then we got to take it on ourselves to figure out, how best to handle the situation. And you can't always walk away. It's not always physically and financially a choice.
Yeah. But you have to figure out how you are going to deal with it. Right? And what choices can you make? Because you have choices that you can make.
100%.
Just create a plan and get a coach.
That is one thing about the coaching. And like I said, I'm not on here as a sales pitch. I'm more and more every day becoming more passionate about like the amazing things that come from working with a coach, because I've gone through it myself. And I have a bunch of, great sort of a mastermind like coaching community, and we get together and, support each other. And like just the changes and the shifts I've seen in my own life as a result of doing that work on me and, understanding my parents did the best they could with the tools they had at the time. That's again something so simple, but I didn't get it.
Wow. Well, now you do. You got it.
And I want to pass that knowledge along. And, it's not cheap and it's a lot of work. And, when I say, my clients come to me with one problem, but there's really something
else. Yes. There's a basket of problems. Yeah. So what are some of your goals for the next 12 months? You like to work in 12 month segments.
I have to learn to garden. I've been living in condos for the better part of 2 years. Yeah, my back.
Yeah.
My poor back. I have to learn to garden. I want to grow my subscriber list. I want to continue doing more podcasts. I've got a few, master classes and workshops lined up. I was just sort of waiting to get the summer, not making excuses, but everybody's doing their own things in the summer.
Yes. Yeah.
So to do some of that in the fall. And, I traditionally do one-on-one coaching. So my sessions are normally 2 to 3 hours a week if it's like a 6-week breakthrough type thing.
Okay.
And there's a lot of work on my end of, setting up tasks, reading journals, like following up with my clients. So I tend to normally take on like 2 to 3 a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So I prefer doing, like I said, the one-on-one. So it's, tailored to everybody's specific needs. And then the other thing that I like to get out in the fall is just doing a sort of a drop-in, Wednesday night, 7 p.m.
Right.
Sort of hot seat
That's cool.
coaching.
Yeah. That's
So
cool.
I've got sort of the framework for all of that stuff done.
Mhm.
And then I have a webinar that is halfway completed, but I put on hold for the summer. Just I didn't know I was going to move.
Okay.
It
So
was
now you
kind
got
of
to get that.
yeah. It's all happened in like a 6-week period of time. So
Oh, okay.
buying and selling and whatnot. So it's kind of crazy.
Ah, well, that's good. That's good. New transition, fresh, new ideas. You'll be in
Yeah,
a new space.
and hopefully a trip somewhere warm.
Yes. Yay. Okay, so how do you celebrate yourself before we wrap up today's interview?
I get my nails done.
Ah, with my favorite color.
I just
Love
did
it.
that I actually just did that this afternoon.
Ah, I love it.
Um, and how do I celebrate myself? I don't know. I've gone from making, a nice 6-figure income to being a solopreneur starting off.
Right,
So I think I joy stack because I don't, financially at this point, I'm starting brand new.
right.
So I can't say I'm going to go out and, buy myself a ring to celebrate myself and say congratulations on, a new certification or signing a new client.
Mhm.
So I think it is reminding myself
Of what you
of
achieved are.
what I've achieved
Yeah.
and, how far I've come.
Beautiful. So, before we end today's chat, what are some ways that um, people can connect with you?
On Instagram and Facebook, I am Amanda Kirkland Coach,
Mhm.
which I think it says right down there at the bottom in
Yes, it
green.
does.
Well, in
Yep.
black on green. And I have a free ebook that I mentioned. There's a link to that on my Facebook and Instagram. The
Okay,
free
perfect.
ebooks, four secrets gritty, strong women need to know to rise above toxic relationships. And then in
Mm.
brackets, without hundreds of hours of therapy.
Ah,
Um,
love it.
and then my website is amandakirkland.com. And there's a registration there that pops up if you want the ebook. Just pop your email address in there and you will receive it momentarily after that.
Yay, awesome. Thank you. So, the way we like to wrap up our interviews is with rapid fire questions. The first one is what's a non negotiable in your life?
The silent treatment.
Mm, yeah, it's very painful. Who's someone that inspires you?
Lady Diana did.
Mm,
I think
yeah,
there's a bit of a kindred spirit there in myself.
so amazing. And I know you're stacking self-care stacking, but what would you say is a self-care experience that you'd like to either do or you enjoy doing?
Yoga.
Yep.
Yeah, my hot yoga is my hot yoga is something that's really important to me. And I only don't go when my back's not feeling well. Oh, I know I have one other non-negotiable that I've
Right.
had to start to be a bit flexible on. It's my Saturday morning coffee and newspaper.
Ah.
It was something that I would not budge on. Like friends wanted to get together for, a brunch on a Saturday.
Friend?
I'm like, Saturday morning
Mhm.
I've now that I have somebody I'm living with somebody,
Right.
I now have to be flexible, but single Amanda, that was a non-negotiable.
Ah. The transition of that, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now Saturday morning it's breakfast
Yeah.
out at the
Yeah.
local, breakfast spot.
But yeah. I like that. It's not a non-negotiable. But I love brunch. Love
Yeah.
brunch.
Yeah, we enjoy doing it, and we first started trying all sorts of different places,
Yeah.
and somehow without discussing it ended up finding one that was like the go-to. So they know us now, and they even, gave me in February when it was my birthday, a few of them came out singing happy birthday, and I got, a free dessert, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being on the show. We are so glad that you're here to educate us and provide us with tools and strategies. And yeah, thank you.
And thank you for having me. It was great.
You're welcome.